Hell yes, Joe Kennedy. Welcome to Discography, the music podcast that delivers the objective truth about the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever existed.
That was quite a rousing hello.
I'm excited. But I'll tell you one thing I'm not excited about. There was an Easter egg planted in a prior episode that I need to get off my chest here before we proceed.
You're going to call attention to this?
I have to because I feel like a fraud.
Man, I would have just never mentioned it again.
No.
It's kind of my fault, actually.
It's entirely your fault. What are you talking about? So a few episodes ago, I think it was maybe Sly and the Family Stone. I can't remember. I said the word outlier 3 times. But I pronounced it outlier. Apparently, I just never knew how to pronounce it. And the 3rd time I said it, Joe actually told me that I had mispronounced it and allowed me to recut it. But then
in
the
back
first
of my
2
mind,
instances,
no, it's outlier.
First 2 instances were left just unattended.
That really shows how my thought process works. Yeah, whatever, nobody will notice.
Well,
edit it out. It
either shows me to be a complete idiot or a student.
The
of
problem
learning.
was the first couple ones were not edit-outable. So
right. It remains an Easter egg, and we'd like to thank.
Now it's not an Easter egg because now you told everybody.
That's true. I'd like to thank Ricky K, friend of the pod, for pointing that out.
Pointing out that outlier of a mistake.
That's right.
That's the only mistake we've made so far yet.
Yeah, well, not opinion-wise, but only about things outside of opinions. Okay, back to business. First things first, you guys need to know just how seriously we take this shit.
Discography is heavily researched, and the music is always reassessed with fresh ears.
And just so you know, we're not just covering albums. We do a very, very honest deep dive analysis of EPs, singles, comp tracks, relevant solo work and bootlegs, and notable appearances on others' records.
And then we rate everything from 0 to 5 stars.
Which allows us to come face to face with the true shape of an artist's overall arc. It really is something special.
Right, in this episode, we are turning the spray cans on PJ Harvey.
So this is a weird one for me. You've known her very well since the beginning.
Yeah, I followed her since, I wouldn't say the very beginning. I think I probably came in around Rid of Me. So the second album is where I came in.
So early enough.
Yeah. And I remember first seeing the video from Man Size and being really floored by that. It stood out as being very high quality from the first 10 seconds of hearing her music.
And then for me, what makes this a very special episode for me, although not technically a capital VSE very special episode, because that's a series that we do, is that most of the major records that PJ had recorded, I had never heard. It was just one of those things, just a hole in my...
Yeah, you kind of came in a little later.
I really did. I came in at Stories of the City, Stories of the Sea. I had heard a little bit of To Bring You My Love. So for me, this discography trawl was a real eye-opener to a lot of stuff.
Looking at it all kind of in a row like we do here, she had a really she made a legitimately great record in 1992 and then a legitimately great record in 2011 that spans almost 20 years.
Spoiler alert.
So that's, I think she's had a lot more staying power than pretty much any of her peers from the time.
What you can definitely say about her, she's always searching and questing for a sound that'll fit her message, and her message is always changing.
Yeah.
Except when it gets dragged through political stuff for way too long, in my personal opinion. But she's
rewarding to fans.
She's always worth listening to.
Right.
But then there's that disappointment of, if you like a certain era of an artist and they are protean like she is, they're never going to stay in one place very long. So
yeah,
to kick things off, phase 1, nascent but greatness adjacent. You like that one?
Right.
Okay, so 1988 to 1991.
Right. She's kind of from a part of England that's like the country. It's a real country ass place.
From Dorset.
Yeah, and that's like real kind of farmland. It's like the equivalent of being from, I don't know, like Iowa or something, out in like farm community.
Yeah, and she was born in October 69.
Lived on a farm.
Yeah, I mean, really out in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of a key element of where she comes from. She sort of, to me, a lot of times kind of harkens back to the English folk tradition. Mm-hmm. And she's not by any means like a slick big city kind of lady. She has those roots in the country. and there's something that's often, especially later in a career, like pastoral kind of about
Wicker
her
Man-y.
music. Right? Yeah,
Definitely
I think that's an
something like that,
influence
yeah.
where she comes from.
Yeah. Musically, she kind of started by becoming a member of Automatic Dillamini. How do you pronounce that?
I would guess Dillamini.
Dillamini, yeah.
Dillamini?
Automatic Dillamini. Anyway, they were based in Bristol.
I'll also go with Dillamini.
And officer, yeah. Judges accept choking on your own vomit. So it was a band that was formed by a guy you'll be hearing quite a lot about during this episode, John Parrish.
So yeah, John Parrish, kind of a multi-instrumentalist. He's kind of like, that was his project.
And then they recorded a bunch of stuff, and PJ Harvey came in at the end. There are recordings with her, nothing that was actually released.
No, I think she's on a couple albums that did come out. This
Really?
This is like the last one. There's one in '89.
Now I sound like a fucking jerk off.
Now you sound like a jerk off.
Now I sound like a jerk off again.
Yeah, so there's definitely stuff on YouTube. I think she's in a video of theirs. She's very young. I think she's like only 20 or something. And she brings a lot of personality to but when she sings a lot of kind of backup vocals on it, and when she comes in and kicks in singing, you're like, oh wait, who's this amazing singer now that's on this?
I would like to, unless something came out, I would like to posit that there is nothing officially released with PJ Harvey on it that Automatic Dillamini released. If you know the answer to this, please write in, because I am in firm contention with Joe on this.
Please write
point.
Into some address that
on any of your platforms. Write to Santa.
If you just put an envelope in the mail that says discography, it'll get to us.
That's right.
But anyway, a bunch of her future collaborators came from this project, notably her longtime drummer Rob Ellis.
Right.
They were not in the band simultaneously.
And of course, John Parrish.
Right, and John Parrish.
Who's all over everything she ever did.
Right. So a lot of
her sense of loyalty is astounding. I mean,
yeah, her core group of muso friends is kind of already on the scene.
Yeah.
But she eventually moves on to doing a solo career. Mm-hmm. She toured with them quite a bit, and got a lot of her chops together in terms of playing in a band.
Right. And she said of that time in the band, she said, I was listening to a lot of Irish folk music at the time, so the songs were folky and full of penny whistles and stuff. And it was ages before I felt ready to perform my own songs in front of other people.
Yeah, it's a folk rock kind of thing, and there are some loud guitars at times, but they're pretty polished. They're kind of they're all good musicians. So she got her act together. You know, she's a tremendous player herself. I mean, you're pretty psyched if she's in your band in any way, shape, or form.
But then in January '91, she left the band. Took a couple of former bandmates with her, formed her own band. Just to be clear, the band was called PJ Harvey, and her name is Paula Jean Harvey. And now we're at phase 2, Fuck You, Then Kill You, or perhaps vice versa, 1991 to 1993. So now she's like really on fire. The first single comes out, Dress, in October 1991, and Sheila Na Gig the following February in 92.
Right, and this is a very different sound from Automatic Dillamini.
Right. This is very hard edge, very of its time, but exemplary of its time.
Yeah, punk rock, very ferocious, distorted, aggressive guitars, and the band has a indelible sort of chemistry. They're very ferocious, and they seem very well rehearsed and well put together. They have their shit together. Extremely.
Yeah, that drummer, it drives that band forward like crazy.
So Rob Ellis, the drummer, played with her for... He's the drummer. He's kind of the key element of the trio. The two of them. The bass player is cool too, but the drumming is really kind of takes center stage. And normally I don't really like busy drummers. Rob Ellis's playing on these records is kind of in the busy sort of like a lot of tom stuff, kind of almost like Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction a little bit. But in this particular band, this great trio, it's really appropriate. He fills in a lot of space.
Very slinty.
Plays with great dynamics. His parts are all super cool. And they just they're, to me, one of the great trios, really. I mean,
they're great. And their output, unfortunately, is very infinitesimal. And so in 92, following up Sheila Na Gig, you have their debut record, Dry, which she described as the first chance that she ever had to make a record she thought would be her last. So she put everything she had into it. And that's why she said it felt very extreme for that reason. Kurt Cobain said it was his 16th favorite album of all time. Dry is kind of a mini masterpiece in its own right.
Yeah, the comparisons to Nirvana are pretty interesting. They have a lot of the same elements. So, you have the really strong drummer, the sort of Novoselic-ish bass player.
Rolls right off the tongue.
And Stephen Vaughn, he's playing all the right notes. He's hitting the notes.
Yeah.
And then, PJ, who plays great guitar and is such a great personality.
Yeah,
and has a big outsized ability to scream and make,
It's always so crazy when you see an artist emerge completely fully formed.
Right.
There's no build-up. There's so many other acts, especially if it's, reduced down to a little core like this.
Yeah.
They don't really come barreling out of the gates like this.
Yeah, I mean, her talent on this is so undeniable. It's so like overwhelming. The great guitar riffs and her like incredible singing and like.
So right on side one, the lumbering lead belly-ish dirge of "Oh My Lover" is kind of a fake out, like you say.
It's kind of a false start.
So then when you hit "Oh Stella" with track 2, when she says "Stella Marie, you're my star," from that intro, she owns me for the whole record.
Yeah, I mean, Oh Stella has that great riff. Like, it's the guitar tone is great. It's this awesome, like cruddy, like distorted amp overdrive sound. She has just the right kind of amount of slop in her playing. She has great feel as a guitar player. She really puts over. She plays just great guitar parts. Like she's if she was just a guitar player, she would be a very formidable musician. The singing is kind of like a whole other thing. So.
The persona. Let's not forget I'm guessing this is not how she is all the time because you wouldn't be able to be in the room with her. But she's, the songwriting is astounding. The playing is astounding. The streak from Oh Stella to Joe.
Yeah.
So you have Oh Stella, Dress, Victory, Happy and Bleeding, Sheila Na Gig, Hair, and Joe. Those songs are all amazing.
Yeah.
And that's all in a row. Joe is insane. Just like my co-host, the real life Joe.
Right. I mean, they do stuff with Odd Time here. There's the Hair is a really cool 5/4 that they're playing in. They navigate that really seamlessly. Mm-hmm. Sheila Na Gig is another one that just the epic riff, and it's really just the sound of them playing in a room. There's very few overdubs.
I just appreciate that she references the Dirty Pillows from Carrie.
Right. Yeah. So it really is the sound of them. Sometimes you almost feel like you're in their rehearsal space hearing them play. It's very much live in the room kind of sound.
Not quite as much as the next studio record, but definitely rehearsal spacey.
Yeah, there's a few of these where this record sounds like it needs a remaster or something because there are some songs.
It's a little muddy.
Some songs kind of sound very full, and explosive, and other songs kind of sound a little like kind of thin and sort of muted in a way. They could probably stand a remaster.
I give this one 4 stars. There's a few songs that aren't quite as good as the rest, but it's a great record, and that's nitpicking.
Yeah,
so
I gave
stars.
it 4.5. You can also see her Slint influence peeking through a little bit. So that was one of her favorite bands. Their big record Spiderland came out not too long before this, maybe like the year before or something. You can that sort of loud, quiet thing that Slint does. The use of Odd Time, this sort of very clean, especially in the last couple of songs, Fountain and Water. Those seem to be very heavily Slint influenced, and there's also something conceptual.
By the way, just to let you know, there's a journey in this record. It's called Dry, but at the end, Fountain and Water.
Right. Yeah. There's
it's
sort
wet.
of it's wet. Conceptual.
So it takes you to a different place.
It's like by the end of it, she's not dry anymore.
That's right. I've never listened to this record and not pissed my pants.
So yeah, outstanding debut, and they're well on their way.
Yeah, the 4 stars, 4.5 from Joe, and
so she gets a lot of it immediately gets tons of media attention, and she's sort of a very famous figure in the fickle world of the British rock press.
Right. And I do want to say that in the grand tradition of very few bands that are named after people, PJ built into her band an exit strategy because it's named after her. and this band fell apart very quickly. So she's a smart woman. 1993, the recordings from 1991 and 92, 4-track demos is released. I do want to note that she has released all of her records with all of the demos. We're not reviewing the demos on those, but this is kind of a standalone release because there are 6 demos of some unreleased tracks mixed in with 8 demos of songs from Rid of Me.
Kind of reflects the spirit of that time, the early 90s, where it's like when you put out your 4-track demos, they're like, that's like a thing at that time.
And Rid of Me was going to be a double, and with one album of studio, one album of demo, which I think definitely would have been a mistake. The 4-track demos has some amazing songs. I want to first talk about Reeling, which is previously unreleased. It was the first song I ever heard from her. It starts off, I want to bathe in milk, eat grapes, Robert De Niro, sit on my face. First song I ever heard from her. Right from that part, I was completely in love.
Yeah, so that's kind of the highlight of the. There's a couple of these that she never did with the trio. There's some that she did do with the trio, and the demos of them are great too. There's demo versions of 50-Foot Queenie,
Rid of Me.
Yeah, and her demos in general.
Yuri G. There's some good ones.
Not just on this collection of demos, but throughout her whole career, her demos are very detailed. Mm-hmm. So her demos have a lot of the arrangement bits already worked out.
You can hear it all, even if it's her voice carrying the instrumentation.
Yeah, you can kind of get a sense of what the dynamics of the song are, what are the quiet and loud parts. She has a lot of the guitar stuff already worked out at a very early stage. So that's definitely how she works. She makes very detailed demos, and they're pretty fun to listen to.
The other previously unreleased songs that I definitely recommend and are going to be on the playlist are Easy and M-Bike.
Yeah, so Easy's kind of like a Sheila and a Gig, Rid of Me, kind of loud, quiet one, kind of a rave up. Definitely could have been on the record. I would have liked to, would have been a great song with that band.
What I love most about this particular record is there's times during these songs where just on a 4-track, she's able to kind of whip things up into this typhoon of completely unhinged raucousness that totally out pig fucks the pig fuck boys.
Yeah, she knows how to get those blown out guitar sounds. And how to make everything sound kind of very
the way she energetic. Produces those 4-track demos, it adds to it.
A lot of energy.
So 4 stars for me on that one.
I gave that one also 4 stars.
And then we move into 1993's Rid of Me. Joe, please. I'm dropping back into my fainting chair. Please take over.
Yeah, so again, when Rid of Me comes out, there's a ton of attention on her. There is she's the British press, they do the thing where they build you up, they tear you down. She's, has a lot of notoriety at that time. She's still very young. And, the British music press kind of invented clickbait before there was clickbait. It's like clickbait without the clicking.
And at the time, she was apparently not eating well. At the end of her relationship, to constant touring, she described it as a nervous breakdown.
I mean, she got pigeonholed a lot as like this angry woman sort of thing. Mm-hmm. That, there's this like angry sexual violence to her. That she's a man hating. I don't get that at all from the music. There a lot of it's very tongue in cheek. Mm-hmm. There's a sense of humor to it. There's a playfulness to it. She's kind of she's turning tropes upside down.
This record I had never heard before. It had escaped me, just like Gone with the Wind. I've never seen, and it punched me in the nuts, man. I love this album. I don't know how it escaped me. Most of the recording was done in 3 days. This was kind of the implosion of the band as well.
Right. So they recorded it at a Pachyderm studio in Minnesota, which is kind of out in rural middle of nowhere, and it's kind of one of those places where you don't really do anything the rest of the day. You make the record, and that's pretty much it. Steve Albini recorded. This was recorded in December '92,
and this was used as a template for In Utero to show Kurt Cobain what it could sound like.
Yeah, In Utero was done just 2 months later in February '93, and that's
Nirvana's In Utero for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking.
Right.
It sounds like just putting it to. It's more complicated than this, but it almost gives the impression of a tape recorder placed inside of a rehearsal room.
Yeah, there's a lot of room sound in that's kind of the strategy that Albini goes for, kind of on both records, and that the room itself has a certain kind of like slap back kind of echo to it. So I mean, it sounds like Nirvana came in like 10 minutes later.
Right. Same mic setup.
Set up on the same gear.
Same fucking mic setups. There's 14 songs on the record. Every single song earns its spot is incredible. There's not one I would take off. It's a very hard 5-star album as far as I'm concerned.
There are some people that don't like the production on this. I mean, I think Elvis Costello just came out with a comment that he loves this album, but it's recorded like shit, and like, you know. But I completely disagree.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an approach. You know, it's a strong flavor.
I mean,
the way it's recorded.
Look, here's what you can say about it. It may have been recorded like shit.
That wasn't recorded like shit. That's wrong.
I'm just saying that's arguable, but this is inarguably the perfect encapsulation of this side of PJ Harvey's persona.
Yeah, of this particular band too.
Of the band, of the persona. Elvis Costello was once really great, but he's wrong about this. So
this is a case of everything sort of clicking. So she's got great material.
Great material.
The band is kind of at the end of a cycle where they've played together a ton. They're very well put together. They really have their shit together.
Right.
It's the right producer, the right time, with the right material. It's kind of everything aligning, you know. And,
every single song like this, I can close my eyes and get this sort of imagistic thing of her being a giant stomping the earth. I mean, she's the way she sells these songs, the vessel through which they pass, as you know, of her persona, it's perfect.
Yeah, it's a pretty brutal and monochromatic sort of sound. There's not a lot of color in this record.
Right.
It's pretty much them playing. It's, you know, it's heavy. It's the loud, quiet parts are really loud and really quiet. There's a lot of dynamics to it. You know, she kind of takes the strategy with lyrics a lot on this, where she's kind of sings in archetypes, and she would kind of do that, I think, through a lot of her career.
Right.
You know, she's able to take on different personas. A lot of like literary references.
Let's throw out
mythological sort of things. You know,
let's throw out some of both of our highlights here. I love Yuri G, 50-Foot Queenie.
Yeah.
Rid of Me. Dry, as in You Leave Me Dry, Man Size. I mean, there's no bad songs. The way the record seems to be structured is the first chunk of 5 songs. There's an act break sort of with Man Size Sextet, which is the only song that's not produced by Albini.
Yeah, it's actually a string sextet, like it's a little like palate cleanser.
And then Bob Dylan's Highway 61 Revisited, both essential tracks, but sort of a palate cleanser. And then we go into a crazy mean streak through the entirety of the rest of the record, and it ends with Ecstasy.
Yeah, and then there's some, you know, there's 4 or 5 that are big, like standards, the songs that she's very famous for. Rid of Me, 50-Foot Queenie, Man Size, Dry. But then there's a couple that are kind of like lesser known that have been kind of forgotten that are super awesome. Like the song Mist. That's another one that's kind of like
great.
Has this,
Rub Till It Bleeds. Rub Till It Bleeds is amazing.
Yeah, I'd kind of forgotten how good that one is.
Son of a bitch, man.
Some of these get sort of mathy. She kind of plays in odd times.
Yeah.
And you know, 50-Foot Queenie is another one where that's an interesting kind of example of how she interprets the blues. So she's kind of influenced by the blues, but you know, not like in a Led Zeppelin, Eric Clapton sort of 12 bar way.
I think that's what she uses to play with and subvert the ideas of what women were supposed to be doing at that time. It was not a very liberated time.
Yeah. I mean, it has this sort of like the kind of like guttural sort of wail that the blues should have. You know, she's kind of getting that element from it, and I think that's probably. Some of that comes from her upbringing, coming from the country and living on a farm and being in the English countryside. There's sort of like she sort of connects to what we call the blues in sort of a different way, you know.
And it really reminded me of actually Georges Bataille's Story of the Eye. I don't know if you've read that, but it's really, it's just like eyeballs, dislocated limbs, and fucking. To me, this is a hard 5.
Yeah, this is definitely. I mean, this is, I think, one of the best records of the decade.
Yeah,
definitely 5 stars.
Hard 5. So in '94, she kind of took a break from the spotlight. All she really did, the only appearance she made, was performing "I Can't Get No Satisfaction" with Bjork at the Brit Awards. In '95, what happened was she took the royalties from her first 2 records, bought a house way out in the countryside, no neighbors at all, living in near isolation, started writing the songs that would appear on To Bring You My Love. Now we're at phase 3, To Tame a Tigress, 1995 to 2004.
So that's the end of the trio.
Right.
They had done a ton of touring, a ton of support on for the first 2 records. And, you know, to this point, she's completely met all expectations. She's delivered on everything, but it's a tremendous amount of pressure on her. And she's kind of, in a fragile mental state.
Right, right. And she's now not alone because she's got John Parrish, she's got Flood, she's got, all these people who are helping her. But, I kind of want to talk about, the name of this phase, To Tame a Tigress. It really makes me think about John Belushi's career, about Jack Black's career, the idea of this, this unquenchable fire that needs to be corralled in a certain way. So Belushi was perfect in Animal House and Blues Brothers. And then, he plays in Continental Divide a newspaperman in a romantic comedy.
With the little flippy notebook.
Like you're right, with the flip notebook and the pencil behind the ear, of course. So same with Jack Black. I mean, it's just, what do we do with this guy kind of thing. And it was a similar thing. Maybe she was feeling it a little bit. I mean, she had a lot of good influences going on, some good songwriting. You had some Velvet Underground, Captain Beefheart, and American blues influences going on.
Yeah, Beefheart's another influence on her, and I guess she was friends with him and consulted with him quite a lot. Yeah, so this record is a very different approach entirely. This is, the first two are band trio records that were mostly done live in the studio with not a lot of overdubs. This is a very overdub heavy record. Flood,
it's like a painter's palette of overdubs.
So Flood comes in to produce, and he's a big name producer at this time. He had engineered for many years for Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois, worked on a lot of their iconic records that they did together. And then by this time, he had a pretty significant career as a producer himself, producing like big giant rock records. Like he did Pretty Hate Machine and The Downward Spiral by Nine Inch Nails.
Zooropa.
He did Zooropa. He did Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness and Adore later, the Smashing Pumpkins record. So big, big major label, fancy studio, every trick in the book.
Melancholy is the apotheosis of the double album that should have been a single.
Yeah.
But some of the instrumental sort of palette washes that Flood employs. He's got bells, chimes, vibraphones, acoustic guitars, strings. This is not the PJ Harvey trio.
Yeah, this is an explosion of the palette. There's lots of keyboard stuff. There's electronic elements. There's some drum machine stuff.
Right, and it's also the intro of the deep rumbling organ tone that replaced some of the bass on the record. So
yeah, there's some subby bass going on in this.
To me, the biggest weakness of To Bring You My Love is the inconsistency of the pacing. The first two songs, To Bring You My Love and Meet the Monster, I love. I don't like the next three songs. And then I love four songs and I don't like the closer. So it's kind of a up and down record for me.
It's weird. I have kind of a different reaction because I like some of the ones that you don't like. Like I like Working for the Man.
Don't like that one. Do you like I Think I'm a Mother? I love that song.
That one's cool. That one's mostly kind of atmospherics, but it sits in the record cool. This record, a lot of it is kind of a little bit overdone to me. Well, some of it is overdone. So like the opener, To Bring You My Love, it's kind of like a slow burn, and it builds to this climax of her singing that.
I love that song. That one's really good.
When it builds to the climax, it's amazing. Her singing on that's like really incredible, really super cathartic. But it's 5.5 minutes. It probably could have been 3.5 minutes, and that makes me kind of not want to really listen to it.
I get it.
It's too much of a commitment. Like it could have said the same thing in 3.5 minutes.
Here's the thing with an artist like PJ Harvey, it's going to be rough because she's always going to search, and that's why you're going to love her. But the problem is if she hits on something that you think is the perfect part of her talent, then when she moves on, it's always going to feel like a disappointment.
Yeah,
it's always going to feel disappointing.
The other song on this that didn't really connect with it on this go around, I liked it at the time, was the lead single, Down by the Water.
Yeah, that one I love.
That one just kind of feels like it doesn't really go anywhere. It feels like it's like promises something that it doesn't really deliver on.
It's more atmospheric, I think. I do like that song, and it is the introduction of her initial usage of a sort of vomit-inducing bassy
I just think the melody's not really that compelling to me, and then it's kind of like the payoff is kind of the whisper vocal at the end.
Joe, we got to put it on the fucking playlist.
Yeah, it should be on the playlist. I mean, it's like
yes,
if you want to know about it, I mean, that was one of her real big hits and kind of a big breakthrough. This is her best-selling album.
Yeah,
it sold 1 million copies worldwide. It achieved everything they wanted it to do. So, it was sold 1 million copies. It kind of established her as a star.
She's
It
kind
was
of
number one on the Paz and Jop thing by like a wide margin.
and in a way, it's kind of cool that this is her biggest one because it's very out in the English countryside, Wicker Man-like. It has a very dark psych vibe to it. And so even though not every song connects, for this particular record to be a big one, is still pretty cool. I give it 3.5 stars.
I give it 3.5 stars too. Long Snake Moan, that's a cool song. That's kind of like very 90s alternative nation. Like, it's I'm kind of surprised that wasn't a single back in the day.
What I want to leave you with on this record is that I believe it sounds the way that an alligator moves, so close to the ground and all slinky like.
Yeah, it sounds expensive.
It does. It does.
It sounds very fancy.
So
it's not. It's good. I don't want to sound like I'm kind of grading on a curve a little bit for.
I get it. Yeah, because there's better PJ Harvey.
Yeah.
But this
it's
one
not a bad
still
record.
there's one's cherry picked on our playlist. It's going to make sense. Yeah. Okay, so from 95 to 96, she does a slew of soundtrack work, duets, etc. The two that she does Batman Forever, The Passion of Darkly Noon, Stella Does Tricks. The couple that I want to mention, 1996 from The Crow, City of Angels, she did a new version of a Rid of Me outtake called Naked Cousin, which is awesome. That'll be on our playlist.
That's a banger.
And Henry Lee from 96. It's actually Nick Cave's song from his Murder Ballads LP. It's the best singing she's done at this point and possibly ever.
Yeah, they have a lot of charisma together. They're perfectly well suited to sing together. It's a good song.
Anyway, moving on to 1996, an interesting record. So these are not records that are necessarily taken seriously by a lot of fans of PJ Harvey. They don't see them possibly
maybe not canon. Questionable whether they're canon.
Well, I think they are.
Yeah.
But here's why a lot of people don't. She's second billed, and she's billed as Polly Jean Harvey. So people kind of see that as an excuse to see it as a sideline thing.
She also didn't really write these.
She didn't.
Right.
She didn't. John Parrish wrote and played the music from Acre. And then PJ sang vocals and wrote the lyrics.
Right. So it's kind of like he did the track and then she comes in and does top line kind of, that approach to writing doesn't always click.
Right.
This record, it doesn't.
It does not click here.
I feel like I can see all the seams. I can.
Totally.
It sounds like what it is, which is somebody coming in and singing over the top of it.
She actually said, and I quote, from the Chicago Sun-Times in 2001, people don't even count that, yet that's the record I'm really proud of. It was an enormous turning point. Lyrically, it moved me into areas I'd never been to before. Faced with John's music, which was so different to my own, it just made me write lyrics in a very different way and structure songs in a different way, and I call horseshit.
I mean, it sounds like, she has all this pressure on her with the release of each of her records up to this point. So this seems like it's kind of a way to go make some music with friends. It's sort of a more low stakes kind of affair.
There's only one song I would put on the playlist, and that is Rope Bridge Crossing. It's kind of like a homespun junkyard mic, the Mark Ribot guitar tone.
Yeah.
But it's
kind of a lot of that sort of stuff on here. A guy banging on a trash can lid kind of stuff.
But that superimposed on a gorgeous melody, now you're talking.
Yeah.
So
the other guy that's in her scene, Mick Harvey, is on this record a lot as well.
Right. Look, this is, to me, as far as I'm concerned, it's an interesting diversion. I can see how this would have been as freeing as it was for her artistically, because it knocked down the walls of whatever box she'd previously put herself in. Ultimately, though, not a major work. I give it 2 stars, and I'm being generous.
I gave it the same 2 stars. We were agreeing on these.
I'm being generous, though, with the 2. All right, so
moving at this point in her career, when the next record comes out, now we're on to Is This Desire?
Well, not yet. There's a few songs that come out through 97. I really just want to mention one. She did a duet with Tricky from Angels with Dirty Faces called Broken Homes in 98.
I kind of like that one.
That one's cool. That's going to be on the playlist. It's kind of like, imagine trip hop, Polly J.
It's very trip hop.
It's good.
Textbook trip hop.
All right, so moving on to a very strange record. So 1998, she put together a record called Is This Desire, which marked a move away from the guitar stuff into much quieter, subtler, more atmospheric, soundscapey stuff based around keyboards, bass, and electronics.
This is the first time that she's put out a record and there's not this like massive amount of like hype and anticipation for it. She's kind of established now. She made her like grown-up adult record with To Bring You My Love, and this one came out with kind of not that much fanfare, really. There wasn't like a big blitz of publicity.
I think there's a specific reason for that. So the thing about this record that actually is the maybe not so hidden reason why it doesn't really work, the keyboard sounds are aggressively vomit-inducing, and the idea was, she has said the idea was to make people almost sick to listen to it. So I don't know if you got that experience.
There's only really a couple songs that it sounds like they're trying to do like a Reznor thing. They're trying to do like an ugly, distorted bass.
There's a few songs on here that are very hard for me to listen to. A couple in particular are My Beautiful Leah.
Yeah, that one does have the farty bass.
And Joy. Joy makes me physically ill.
Yeah, so those two in particular, I agree. I don't
know.
That's overdone
it's
too much.
Very confrontational with the, I want to make people, uncomfortable. There's some really good stuff on it. The Sky Lit Up is amazing. Catherine is amazing. The River is amazing. Actually, the three last songs are all really good.
This record was a lot less successful than To Bring You My Love. It sold like 1/5 as many copies worldwide. It was kind of a bomb at the time. I prefer this record, I have to say. Pound for pound, I like this record.
Look, it's interesting.
Yeah,
it's really.
Well, I think there's a lot of good songs.
It's kind of her trip hop album, and that's cool. She does it well.
There are a couple songs that where the sonics just don't really work. I think the two that you pointed out.
But the songwriting's always good. Yeah, that's the thing. There's not an overriding issue there.
The opening tune, Angeline, that's one of my favorite songs she ever wrote.
That's a great one.
It's a really haunting
The first
kind of
three
song.
songs, Angeline, The Sky Lit Up, and The Wind, are amazing.
Yeah, The Wind, that's another one. She has that Slint influence. It's kind of that she's whispering the vocal, and then it has a kind of real sense of foreboding, the same way some of those Flint songs have. And then when her voice comes in, she's kind of also doing a different thing with her voice on this record. She's kind of singing in this sort of disembodied wraith-like kind of tone.
Yep.
And is not really doing like the guttural blues kind of influence thing.
Almost like a sultry house goddess kind of a thing.
Yeah, she's kind of floating over the top of a lot of it.
It was also the only record where the record company came in and had a degree of creative input, which had never been sanctioned on any of the other records.
Which is weird because it really doesn't sound like
that. It doesn't sound like that at all. How
For starters, I would have thought that Angeline would have been the single, but Perfect Day Ellis was the single. That's an okay song, not one of the best songs on the record.
It's definitely not one of the best songs on the record.
I would have thought Angeline would have been
That would have
single.
probably sunk it, I would think.
But I think this record is maybe her most underrated. I think this is one that people kind of sleep on this one. I think there's a lot of good material.
I think it's a very good album that could have been an even better album if the Sonics had been matched with the songwriter a little better. I give it 3.5 stars.
I give this 4 stars.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then in 1999, for the Book of Life soundtrack, a really, really good song called The Faster I Breathe, The Further I Go. I mean, really good. It's this incredible low-slung stunner that belongs on her short list.
I think that was a demo.
It was a 4-track demo, but really, really good.
Yeah, it has sort of crappy sounding kind of sonics to it, but it really works in its favor. It's kind
really
of a cheap
good.
sounding drum machine and like kind of blown out guitars. But yeah, cool song. That's a playlist. That's a playlist.
That's you're welcome for that one.
Yeah, that's good.
So then we move into this century, 2000's Stories from the City, Stories from the Sea. And really oddly, this is kind of where I come in on PJ. I bought this at the time, and it has a very strong New York City vibe because that's where she was for a lot of the writing of this. She was shooting a film for Hal Hartley, and felt inspired by the city, so wrote some of the best songs of her career.
Yeah, this came out in 2000, but it feels to me sort of like the last great album of the 90s. It has like a pre 9/11.
It wraps up the classic period.
Yeah, it has a pre 9/11 like pre bummer New York City.
It does.
Feel
it does.
To it. It sounds like better times.
It does. There's some incredible songs in this. Big Exit is amazing. Good Fortune, in which she sounds so very much like Patti Smith. And then one of my favorites she's ever done, The Whore's Hustle and The Hustler's Whore.
Yeah, so this one she's kind of getting back to doing rock kind of tunes, but it's not monochromatic and brutal sounding like the first two records.
Great.
It's a more kind of fleshed out, and it has more color in it than those first two, but she's back in the zone of doing rock, and it's not like
the guitars sound beautiful. They're not overblown here, but she's still,
she's never sang better, really. I mean, I remember when I remember hearing this the first 30 seconds of the first song. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm super into this. I love this record.
One of the things I love about this one is that it's like all her past selves rolled up like one of those nougaty nut rolls. You know those shits?
And it's joyous.
Yeah.
There are times of it where it's really joyous and feels like kind of like it soars.
Yeah.
I love this one.
those records that Bowie would make that would be sort of a clearinghouse for old personas, like The Next Day or Scary Monsters. This reminds me of that. It's a collection house of psyches.
Yeah, and it's also sort of, I think it's in a way her most the record where she's just being herself and kind of not really putting on a persona so much, all the time.
I agree.
Is This Desire?
It's very relaxed.
Is This Desire and Bring You My Love are very much where she is playing the sort of larger than life persona. But this is just sort of her being herself. I feel like I think
in a lot of ways it's the ultimate PJ Harvey record, although not necessarily the best one overall, but the ultimate one.
She didn't overthink it. No. She had the material. They went, it sounds very effortless.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound overcooked in any
There's
way.
a couple songs that we'll take off for the playlist, but this one really is a classic record. I'll give it 4.5 stars.
I gave this 5.
5?
I love this record. And the Whore's Hustle and the Hustler's Whore is that's kind of it's a real centerpiece. It's like right in the middle of the record.
It's the best one. It is.
And
it's very well paced. I mean, because I think that's the idea of that song is to smash the build up to that to smithereens to go in a different direction for the rest of the record.
Yeah, and then This Is Love. That's kind of like an old school banger. Could have fit on the first couple of records easily. And then maybe my favorite song on the record, Horses in My Dreams.
Is that really your favorite?
Yeah, I mean, it comes in, it's the penultimate song. It's the 11th song on the record. Usually that's where you bury your weakest song.
Right.
I just love the atmosphere. It's just a really beautiful, melancholy sort of thing. And I think the title is probably a reference to Patti Smith.
Yeah, I think she sounds most like Patti Smith.
And a little bit of Chrissy Hynde. I mean, a lot of critics at the time pointed that out, noticed it.
But not in a bad way, not in a pastiche way. She embodies it.
Let's be honest, she's a better singer than Patti Smith.
She is.
She's a more accomplished singer.
So then for the next few years, she's just kind of doing this and that. A few projects I just want to point out. Number one, in 2001, she was on Piano Fire and iPennies on Sparkle Horse's It's a Wonderful Life.
Which is a very good record.
Great record. And so just for those two tracks, then she did a desert session, which is definitely going to be on the playlist called Crawl Home.
Yeah, so the Desert Sessions is like Josh Homme's crew out there.
Yeah.
And it's Josh Homme and a bunch of other like kind of metal bros.
This is as close as she's gotten to Rid of Me since then.
Yeah. So it's
fucking awesome.
The song
I'd love to hear a whole album.
Yeah,
like that.
The song kind of really has his fingerprint on it. It's kind of the kind of thing he writes. She fits in great.
That's going on the playlist. I give that 4.5 stars.
I gave it 4.
And then
I wish I knew which of the Desert Sessions bros played on that. I couldn't find any credits for it, but
it's on the volumes 9 and 10 comp.
It kind of sounds like she's fronting Queens of the Stone Age.
Yeah, exactly.
Which
so then,
she, in effect, is
that next year. A couple different things. She works with Marianne Faithfull on Before the Poison. 5 songs on that record were produced and either written or co-written by Harvey, plus a smattering of instrument help.
And some of them sound quite PJ-ish. In their
frankly, I don't really like it very much. I give it 2.5 stars.
Problem is Marianne, her vocal range is almost nil.
So in 2004 as well, she hooks up with Mark Lanigan on his album Bubblegum.
He's another one of the Desert Session bros.
Yeah, so there's 3 songs they do: Hit the City, Methamphetamine Blues, and Come to Me. But holy shit, Come to Me. Amazing slow blues.
Yeah, well, Lanigan's a really good singer. He has kind of that whiskey-soaked kind of... Their voices together are real nice.
Yeah, so, for the group of the songs, I give it 3 stars. For Come to Me, I give it 4.5.
Sure, that sounds. What did I give this? I think I rated the lot as 4 stars. All of PJ's. I didn't individually rate them, but that is a good Mark Lanigan record. Anyway, Bubblegum is one of his better records. That's a cool record. And so her performances are notable.
So that's 3 years of doing this, that, and the other thing. Now we enter phase 4 for fans of Michael Jordan's baseball career, aka the artist's fear of repetition and the many blind alleys down which that can send one. 2004 to the present. Now we enter 2004's Her. This was, recorded during a 2-year period, which makes no sense to me because the whole tiny little thing sounds like skeletal demos, right? Even some of the best songs do.
Yeah, so let's rewind a little bit. At this point, she's put out 5 PJ Harvey records, right? Official, like not including 4-track demos, not including whatever the John Parrish thing, but canonical PJ Harvey as solo artist records,
right,
with her name on it. The first 5 are all like kind of big deal, like statement records. This was the first one that sounds kind of tentative.
It does sound tentative. It sounds very tentative. Now, that's not to say there's not great songs on it, but there's a lot of songs that are really not that good on it, too.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like she's doing the 90s trio sound. And
by the way, she plays, except for the drums, she plays every single instrument on the album.
She's busting out the guitar pedals and doing the sort of that kind of sound. And there are some really cool guitar things on here. There are some pretty sick licks on some of these songs.
Who the fuck is awesome.
Yeah, there's she doesn't like to repeat herself. So,
right, which is great.
There's a couple other cool things. The song "Shame" is cool.
Shame is great.
That's kind of like an "Is This Desire" kind of.
It's front loaded.
Yeah, kind of ghostly thing.
So "Shame," "Who the Fuck," "Pocket Knife," and "The Letter" all in a row are great.
"The Letter" is probably my favorite song on the record. I like the kind of the crud factor.
Exactly.
It has a good like blown
and
out
then
thing.
The only other song I like for the entire remainder of the record is "The Desperate Kingdom of Love," only because it's kind of an outlier. It's this really sweet acoustic thing.
Yeah.
So I like it.
This is the first. There's some filler on this one. There's a few towards the end where it seems like they're kind of padding it out a little bit.
You're being generous. I think from track 6 to 14, there's nothing except one song that I would pick for the playlist.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like "Cat on the Wall," but that's like one that. Again that it seems like that was maybe she was like, I could flesh this out, but fuck it.
You know what this is? This is really it's a more measured attempt at the magic of 4-track demos.
Yeah, right.
That's
sure.
what it is.
Yeah, I can see that. I gave this 3 stars.
I give it 2.5. Mm-hmm. It's overall, this is a very desultory attempt, and it's her most tossed off record. So 2.5 from me, 3 from Joe. Mm-hmm. Then we fast forward to 2007's White Chalk. Now, this is where the Michael Jordan thing really comes into play. Here's a woman who didn't...
Because Her is kind of for doing her regular thing, but just not quite as enthusiastically.
Not quite as well.
Right.
Now we have her tackling an instrument she'd never touched before.
Now she's Michael Jordan playing baseball, yeah, right.
Now she's...
The problem is she's a very interesting guitar player and a seamless, like, really good, strong guitar player.
Right.
She's a mediocre piano player, and then there's not really anything very creative in the piano. It's not like she has some outsider Cecil Taylor way of approaching the piano. It's all pretty basic.
Here's the predicament. So what she said this in an interview she did in The Wire, that the great thing about learning a new instrument from scratch is it liberates your imagination. That's the key. I think she's looking to unlock something inside of herself, and I think the final product is almost secondary because it's really about, for her, the journey of her as an artist.
Yeah, so, I mean the inherent problem is the basicness of the piano, her piano playing. The songs are built on sort of uninteresting structures a lot of the time.
Right.
The sort of bass thing underpinning it is not really as like she can kind of just come up with cool shit on a guitar and make it sound interesting. So there's always that underpinning everything. It's built around those cool guitar things she can do. She can't really do that on the piano.
No. And so it's interesting, and some of the songwriting is good. I would pick 3 songs from it. 3 out of 11 that are really good is "The Devil," "White Chalk," and "To Talk to You." But, this record is exactly like what happened when Michael Jordan tried his hand at baseball. The rest of the world is holding their collective breath, peeking at their figurative watch, ready for him to pick up his her fucking guitar and stop frittering about. That's kind of what this record is. I give it 2.5 stars.
Yeah, the sound of it. So she's playing piano, but it's a distinct kind of piano. It's like this sort of slightly out of tune, like parlor, like living room piano.
It's almost like haunted house.
Well, exactly. I was going to say there should be like a creepy little girl in the corner, like in a rocking chair.
It's like stroking
the hair of like a creepy little doll.
It reminds me of like being in a haunted house and someone playing chopsticks in an out of tune piano.
Yeah, the piano's slightly kind of smeared and out of tune.
Yeah.
It's kind of goth, I guess.
It is kind of goth. It is, and
actually, I'll say the atmosphere and the vibe is fine. It's just the tunes aren't really so much.
She didn't really deliver. She really didn't deliver. So,
and I also think that if like a couple of these kind of songs on a regular record would have been fine, but a whole record like this,
I'm just grateful it's 34 minutes long.
It's short. It's short.
Yeah. So then moving forward a few years, it's very interesting what happens here. In 2009, she does another record with John Parrish where they're double billed, and all the music is written by Parrish.
Yeah, same approach as the other one.
Right. So he's playing most of the instruments. She is writing the lyrics and singing. It's called A Woman a Man Walked By. But interestingly, I think just by dint of context, because she had been bringing such weak stuff to the table, through the magic of context, this turns out to be a very strong record. There's a lot of really good stuff.
Something just clicked on it that didn't the first time they used this approach. Something on this one clicks, and this record is like one curveball after another. So it has a really good spirit of kind of adventurousness to it. And the first thing that kicks in, the first song,
Black-Hearted Love,
right off the bat,
good.
I'm like, fuck yeah,
so good, yeah.
So it's like television or something.
I know.
It's kind of like kind of a whole different sound, like kind of like the clean kind of limber guitar.
I want to warn any PJ purists. Almost every single song from this record is going on the playlist. All of it except for Leaving California and The Soldier. Everything else is going on it.
The one thing that's a little bit of is a little bit distracting for me on this one is that it seems like John Parrish at some point right before this acquired a Mellotron and went like completely berserk with it. It's like a lot of Mellotron. I don't
mind it.
It's cool though, but I do like how much it mixes up. It's like, okay, that the kind of television style thing is the first song. Then there's like kind of like minor key folk sort of thing next. It's totally different. And then there's like a pretty acoustic thing.
I think my favorite thing is the title track, or A Woman a Man Walked By / The Crow Knows Where All the Little Children Go.
Yeah.
That song is batshit crazy.
Yeah, that one's not my favorite in terms of listenability, but I like the spirit of it.
It's great.
I like
crazy.
what they're going for. And
then Pig Will Not. The chorus is just her barking.
It's another one, not an amazing song, but I like the Anything Goes.
I think it's an amazing song.
It's more of a sound.
It's very unexpected.
It's cool though.
I give the record 4 stars.
I also really like the Passionless Pointless. That song is really good. That's another very pretty, it's a totally different kind of thing than anything else in the record. It's super floaty.
And Cracks in the Canvas too.
Yeah, a lot of good songs on this. I didn't even know this record existed.
Me neither.
It came out with very little fanfare. It was
It's excellent. It's the most unexpected record, I think.
Yeah, this is the kind of thing that I hope to find when we do these episodes. To find the one that I
would like to announce that I'm very, very grateful for the audience, because if it wasn't for you guys, I never would have discovered this. What am I going to do this in a vacuum? And the answer is yes. Okay, so
I wouldn't have discovered this except eventually.
Right, and only under every circumstance imaginable. Okay, moving forward to 2011, Let England Shake.
Another triumph.
Recorded in 5 weeks.
Back on top.
She is back on top. Recorded in 5 weeks at a church in Dorset during April and May 2010. So this is a very, very different record.
This record dominated the UK Press Awards. It won the Mercury Prize, which is like the most prestigious award over there. And it also won the Ivor Novello Award for Best Album. The Ivor Novello Award is a songwriting award. So highly decorated album, much beloved. And
a lot of it was recorded live. A lot of it was improvised.
It's very organic. It's like not very little in the way of electronics. And it's really it's an anti-war album, really, mostly. It's she kind of employed a new voice on White Chalk. White Chalk kind of has this sort of even more spectral and disembodied kind of voice than she'd had before, and she kind of inhabits a different voice entirely on Let England Shake. it sort of has the sort of wail of like a mother who has lost a son on the battlefield.
Right.
kind of sound.
Right. Yes.
You know,
exactly.
it's very connected to English folk. To me.
Yeah.
And somehow she managed to pull off where it evokes the sort of battlefield imagery. And I think also in the melodies too. So a lot of the songs have that kind of English folk, like very sturdy, like folk song kind of.
There's
melodies.
a couple of places where I swear to God, it sounds just like early Cocteau Twins, like the Glorious Land.
Yeah, there's a couple where they
like
even,
early.
They even treat the vocal in a way that has like a chorus to it. That's kind of like a Liz Fraser thing,
right? Ultimately, this is definitely one of her best records.
It does not seem tentative at all.
Not at all.
Where the last couple of records seem like kind of like sort of tentative.
You know,
this is a strong statement.
You look at this record and you're like, okay, it is worth it when an artist searches, because sometimes it may take them a little while, but then they stumble on something like this. I don't know of a record that really feels exactly like this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's very cinematic, and it somehow really evokes that space, and it gets across an anti-war message. I mean, the message that I take away from this is like, it's weird that in modern times where we have cameras everywhere and we can see everything, how desensitized we are to war. This is in 2011, so the Iraq War has been going on a long time. Britain's heavily involved in it. This is her statement against that, and she gets that message across without really pounding you over the head with it. You know, she gets it across with imagery and sound.
To be totally honest, I'm not big on war songs. I'm not big on political songs. To me, I just hate listening. Being battered over the head.
This
with
is
a message.
evocative, though.
It's exactly the music and the vibe of it carries the message. The words hitting you over the head,
right?
That's not happening.
Right.
So it works in a way that is astoundingly powerful.
The lyrics match the melodies really well too.
Right.
So there are definitely some lyrics that are very strong. What's the one? There's the "Hanging in the Wire" is a song that has like a very much like dead body in the field kind of imagery.
Right.
But that one is one of my favorites on the record because it's kind of built around this like. It's sort of like a it's almost like a hymn or something. It's built around this kind of floating piano thing.
Yeah.
And the words that maketh murder. That's another key.
That's so good.
It has the callback to Summertime Blues. The ironic, going to take my problem to the United Nations.
Right.
It's like. This album's really...
And then written on the forehead with the incredibly well-deployed 90 Blood and Fire sample.
Yeah, that's great, too. That one does have that Cocteau-treated sound.
Yeah.
This album's really good. I
give it 4.5.
I give it 4.5, too.
Did you?
Yeah.
You're a pally.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so...
Very strong album.
That was 2011. All right, then we move ahead 5 years. 5 years. The Hope 6 Demolition Project. Look, she's allowed to have her own life and do whatever she wants. I'm just saying
20 years into her career.
But then 5 years go by and, no offense to PJ, but this album sucks.
This album is another one this is a much more overtly political sort of thing.
Way overtly political. So,
and it's kind of lacking in poetry.
But also, the background of the record, it was created in sessions that were open to the public as part of an art installation.
Right, it's kind of some kind of highfalutin concept.
Yeah, she's being watched, and there's nothing that I don't know how that could be creatively provoking. I don't know if that diminished the album's power, but I will say
this is also about something very specific, the subject matter. Where
Right,
Let
right.
England Shake is kind of more of a general, like, it's a screed against the brutality and pointlessness of war.
Right. So
it's sort of a big topic. This is sort of a narrow topic that boxes her in.
It's a reference to the Hope 6 projects in the U.S. where rundown public housing in areas with high crime rates have been demolished to make room for better housing, but with the effect that many previous residents could no longer afford to live there, leading to claims of social cleansing. I read that. But this stuff is directly referenced. It feels to me like some of the worst shit that Phil Oakes ever did, like All the News That's Fit to Sing. I like some of that stuff, but I mean, after a while, you feel like you're being beaten over the head with a newspaper.
Yeah, she got some criticism about this that I think is pretty legit. That it's it's sort of patronizing. It doesn't really offer any solutions. And it's sort of like, the first year college photography student who goes and like takes photographs of homeless people or something,
Exactly.
and passes it off as high art or something.
Right,
it's just kind of like easy,
and then bans homeless people from coming into the gallery.
Yeah, right. It's sort of she got criticized. That's not really me saying that. That's the kind of criticism she got from this.
Right.
It's just not musically engaging.
It's not
really.
Yeah.
I think that's why it comes across that way. Is because
that's why it sucks.
It just doesn't really have a lot of power because it's just the songs aren't really memorable.
Look, Let England Shake had some serious musical merit to it.
Right.
She found a new way to convey this message, and maybe from the things that she had seen, that she was less focused on a record and more focused on getting her opinions heard.
Right.
But unfortunately,
sometimes your priorities get off.
Yeah, unfortunately, encasing these messages in this music drained them of power and made it powerless, at least for me. I know this was like, it got some good reviews, and it's more highly thought of than I think of it. I don't get it. I give it 2 stars.
I give it 1.5. I even
really wow. You hate this?
I didn't really like it at all.
It kind of sucks.
Yeah.
I would take off River, Anacostia, and The Wheel. Those are the 2 I'd put on the playlist.
I didn't really think anything was really playlisty.
Really, wow.
This, yeah,
wow. So
it also has a real cringe, that awful lyric. They're going to build a Walmart here.
That's the first song.
That's like the hook. That's like the payoff line of the
first song, isn't it?
It's like the big payoff.
That's not good.
That's oof.
Yeah. The next thing she released is a single called Guilty in the same year. And that's actually better and with more swagger than anything on Hope 6. Then
I got to say Guilty, that would have probably been the best song on the Hope 6 album.
It would have been.
I think that would have been.
It would have been.
Because it's a little bit more, it sort of pops a little bit more than any of those songs.
And then oddly, her, as far as I'm concerned, her worst single. On the A side, A Dog Called Money. On the B side, I'll Be Waiting.
Yeah. So this kind of makes you just want this phase of her career.
It's so bad. So here's a sample lyric from A Dog Called Money. It's all about money. That's what's going on. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then the B side is a sort of hateful Dylan-esque screed, sort of like Masters of War. This is my least favorite release from PJ. This won't count on the worst albums because it's a single, but I give it 1 star.
I also give it 1 star.
It sucks. The next good thing she releases in 2018.
But before, I want to mention a little bit about the next single, The Camp.
Not a fan.
Well, okay, this is some more Kmart Woody Guthrie.
Yeah.
It's about like a labor camp, kids in labor camps. I mean, I like it's. Thank you for calling attention to.
Is
the
it
situation.
pro or con?
It's con.
Well,
why do you want to listen to this?
My 3-year-old works in a factory, so I don't connect with this vibe at all.
Yeah.
I give that 1.5 stars.
I gave that one 1 star.
And then the next one is actually really cool. It's called An Acre of Land.
And when I saw that title, I thought, this is going to suck.
An Acre of Land? I know. It's a shitty title, but it's
going to be another message song. But
it's actually a very plaintive meditation, and it's her best work since Let England Shake.
It's a little bit like Let England Shake. It has that sort of minor key English folk thing.
I would put that one on the playlist.
That's a good song.
3.5 stars.
I agree.
And then she does a cover in 2019 for Peaky Blinders on the soundtrack. She does an incredibly intense Nick Cave cover of Red Right Hand that proves she still has what it takes musically. I give that one 4 stars.
I gave that one 5 stars. I like that one a lot.
It's a great song. It's a great song.
It beats the original.
Really?
Yeah,
it's
the original's
up
cool.
There, yeah.
But it's a rare example of someone who kind of does a reimagining of a cover and kind of takes it to a completely different place. That's kind of what you want covers to do a lot of the times, but they don't often make it there.
In the last 5 years, 5 years, she's only been doing soundtrack work, really.
Right.
Sorry. Since 2019, only soundtrack work. So that's 3 years.
And there's some of that.
She did the All About Eve soundtrack. In the last thing she released 3 years ago in 2019, she did the soundtrack for The Virtues, which is a TV series. This brings us up to date. She hasn't released anything in 3 years.
There's one tune in there. It's a vocal song. That's cool.
Which one?
The Crowded Cell. That's a cool song.
The Crowded Cell. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Pretty much just a straight up PJ tune, and that should go on the playlist.
That should go. That's the last song on the soundtrack.
Yeah.
So
that's it.
Yeah, she. We haven't heard from her in 3 years. As far as the shape of her arc, she came charging out of the gate like a bull in heat. Then she started looking around and exploring her options, and although it may have seemed like creative freedom, It wound up choking out all her most unique traits, in my humble opinion. But these days, she doesn't seem too concerned with uniqueness. PJ Harvey is a true artist, and all her detours are and will be always worth exploring with her, no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, she's someone I've stuck with her entire. I kind of dropped off a little bit around the time of White Chalk.
White Chalk. That's where that's where she lost a lot of people.
But I did, Letting Lynn Shake's a great comeback. That's been a while now.
And like a penis, I never had rid of me, but I bought White Chalk.
Right.
I make no sense.
Like a penis touched for the very first time.
Top 3 albums. My number 3 PJ Harvey record is Dry. My number 2 is Stories from the City, Stories from the Sea. And my number 1 is Rid of Me. My worst album, Hope 6 Demolition Project.
I hate when these are the same. This is very similar. At number 3A for me, just outside the top 3, would be Letting Lynn Shake. Number 3, I have Dry. Number 2, Rid of Me. And number 1, Stories from the City, Stories from the Sea.
Nice. Yeah, I just like the brutal sledgehammer of the Albini production. That's her Cro-Magnon primate howl.
I think most people would probably rank Rid of Me tops.
Yeah, but I get it though. Stories from the City is all of the PJ.
Yes, it's
not
a great
just
album.
one slice of it.
And then the worst album is the Hope 6 whatever thing.
Yeah, fuck that thing. Anyway, thanks for joining us. We have about 1 billion episodes that we're taping through the next upcoming weeks. A ton of really cool stuff that's coming out, right,
Some
Joe?
cool guests coming on.
Awesome guests.
And some really cool artists. So this was a fun one to do. This one went down easy. This was
it did. It was a lot of fun.
Even her albums that are not as
we
good.
We love having guests on, but we also love just doing it alone because there's an energy that you and I have that is different with a guest.
Yeah.
We have a slew of them coming up. Don't miss any of it. It's all going to be noteworthy and worthy of stealing all of our playlist ideas.
Follow us on all the social medias.
That's right.
On your Facebooks and your Twitters and your Instagrams.
Smash all the appropriate buttons.
Sign up to the Spotify thing.
Please subscribe. It helps us quite a lot.
And we're going to be unveiling some more stuff in the future. Some extra features and things and whatnot.
We have actually Discography presents sideline shows that are coming up. Yeah. So stay tuned. Tell all your frenemies about us, and we'll see you next time on Discography.
Bye-bye.